People often say kindness comes back to you when you least expect it, but for Emma, a young nurse barely making ends meet, one simple act of kindness changed her life in a way she could never have imagined. It all began in a quiet hospital room, with an old man everyone else had already given up on. Hey everyone, welcome to here we share heartfelt real-life stories that remind us of the goodness still left in the world. If you believe kindness matters, don't forget toned in the comments below. And now, let's dive into Emma's unforgettable story. Emma was 27 years old and had been working as a nurse for 3 years in a small community hospital in Ohio. Life hadn't been easy for her. She grew up in a foster home, never knew her real parents, and had learned to rely on herself for everything. Her days were long, her nights sleepless, and her bills always waiting in a pile on the kitchen counter. Yet, despite all of it, Emma carried something special: kindness. She treated every patient with the same warmth, whether they were cheerful, angry, or frightened. Her co-workers admired her, though they often wondered how she stayed so positive when her own life seemed so hard. One cold winter morning, Emma was assigned to room 304, a new patient named Henry Whitmore. He was an elderly widower, 75 years old, battling a severe heart condition. The doctors whispered that he might not make it through the month. When Emma walked in, Henry barely looked at her. His face was pale, his voice weak, and his eyes distant, like a man waiting for the end. Most nurses kept their visits short. Henry was known to be grumpy and quiet. But Emma didn't see a difficult patient. She saw a lonely soul. So, she sat by his bedside and asked softly, "How are you feeling today, Mr. Whitmore?" He just muttered, "Still alive, I suppose. Though I don't know why." Emma smiled gently. "Maybe because there's still something left for you to do," she said. Henry looked at her for the first time, really looked, and something in his expression softened. Over the next few weeks, Emma became his favorite nurse. She talked to him about simple things: the sunrise, the smell of coffee, the sound of laughter in the hallway. She brought him small things from her own lunch, fresh fruit, sometimes a chocolate bar. Henry began to smile again. He even laughed a little. One afternoon, Henry asked her to sit with him longer than usual. "Emma," he said quietly, "you remind me of my late wife, Margaret. She was kind, just like you. You know, I've been alone for 10 years. My children, they're gone. My relatives, they don't visit. I think people forget that old men still need love too." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I don't think anyone ever stops needing love," she whispered. That night, Henry couldn't sleep. Neither could Emma. She kept thinking about how unfair it was that someone who had lived so long had no one left to care for him. The next day, Henry made a surprising request. He asked Emma if she'd have dinner with him, not in a restaurant, but right there in his hospital room. She hesitated at first, but when she saw how much it meant to him, she agreed. That evening, she brought in 2 sandwiches and a small candle. The two of them laughed, talked, and for a moment, the hospital walls felt like a warm home. Weeks turned into months. Henry's health continued to decline, but his spirit began to brighten. Emma became his reason to keep going. Then one snowy evening, Henry looked at her and said something that stopped her heart. "Emma," he said softly, "I know this might sound foolish, but will you marry me?" Emma gasped. "Henry, you don't have to say that. You're not thinking clearly." But Henry smiled. "I've never been more clear in my life. You've given me more joy in these last few months than I've had in years. I don't have much time left, but I want to leave this world knowing I made someone happy, and that someone cared for me, truly." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She didn't love Henry the way a young woman loves a man, but she felt a deep affection, a connection that went beyond romance. She thought about it for days. Then, she said yes. They had a small ceremony in the hospital chapel, just a few nurses, the chaplain, and Henry in his wheelchair, holding Emma's trembling hands. Everyone whispered about the young nurse who married the dying man, but Emma didn't care. She wasn't after money or recognition. She just wanted him to feel loved, even if it was for a little while. After the wedding, Henry's health took a turn for the worse. He was fading fast. But every morning, Emma sat by his side, reading to him, holding his hand, and reminding him that he wasn't alone. Not on his last night, Henry whispered, "Thank you, my dear wife. You've given me peace." Emma kissed his forehead and said, "Rest now, Henry. You're loved." He passed away quietly, with her hand in his. The days after his death were hard. Emma grieved deeply. But she found comfort in knowing she'd brought kindness into a life that desperately needed it. Then, a few weeks later, she received a letter from a law firm asking her to come in. She assumed it was paperwork for Henry's passing. But when she arrived, the lawyer handed her a folder and said, "Mrs. Whitmore, your husband left you something." Emma opened the folder and nearly fainted. Inside was a will and a note from Henry. The will stated that she was now the sole owner of Whitmore Health Systems, a massive network of hospitals across the country. Henry wasn't just an old man in a hospital bed. He was the billionaire founder and owner of the very hospital where Emma had worked. Her eyes filled with tears as she read his letter. "My dear Emma, you showed me what true kindness looks like, not the kind that expects reward, but the kind that comes from the heart. I built hospitals to heal bodies, but you healed my soul. Use what I've left you to continue that kindness, to help others like you helped me." Emma broke down crying right there in the lawyer's office. She didn't care about the money or the power. She only cared about honoring Henry's final wish with the inheritance. Emma didn't quit her job. She stayed at the hospital, but she used Henry's wealth to make changes, starting with better pay for nurses, free treatment for uninsured patients, and a scholarship fund for young people who wanted to go into healthcare but couldn't afford it. Years passed, and people began to call her the kind nurse who changed everything. But Emma always smiled humbly and said, "It wasn't me, it was kindness. Kindness changed everything." Emma's story reminds us that kindness doesn't always come back in the way we expect. Sometimes it comes quietly, through a thank you, a smile, or even a miracle we never saw coming. She didn't show kindness for money or fame. She showed it because it was the right thing to do. And that simple act of caring, of seeing the person behind the pain, transformed her life forever. So, if you ever feel like your kindness doesn't matter, remember Emma. Remember that love given freely has a way of echoing through the world, touching hearts you may never even meet.